Does the speed of light at vacuum change? This video discusses how the kinetic energy of photons in a vacuum is not always the same. This is a short video. Therefore, only basic concepts are included in it. We know that the speed of light is 3 × 10⁻⁸ meters per second. It was proposed by Einstein in his special relativity theory. But Einstein had won the Nobel Prize for explaining the photoelectric effect. But if we take a closer look at the photoelectric effect, we realize that the speed of light in a vacuum is not always the same. For that, we are experimenting with the black body radiation and the photoelectric effect here. According to our studies, there is no specialty in black body radiation or the photoelectric effect. We can explain them naturally like every action occurring in our surroundings. Nature is giving us the answers if we observe it clearly. We can observe everything as simple, even the Big Bang, inflation, or any action happening in our surroundings as the same. Because everything in nature is working under the same laws. Here we are trying to understand the force and energy. If we can understand very well, what happens when a force is applied to an object? It will give us the answer to everything. We are categorizing energy as kinetic energy and potential energy. But we know that matter is also energy, and we can call it stored energy. Normally we can say that an atom or a particle always seems to be in an equilibrium state. Kinetic energy or potential energy of the object will not change the equilibrium of the system, because it is not mingling with the stored energy in it. A single photon doesn't have a rest mass, but it can show gravity and it can add mass to a system. I am trying to make a better explanation for our present concepts about energy with my observations of our surroundings. We have the very best equations for energy, E = mc² and E = hf. Einstein explained to us the relationship between mass and energy. In the Planck relation, E = hf relates energy with frequency. To say something about my thoughts on the subject of energy, I would like to go back to the period of Planck and Einstein and find a relation between these two theories. Planck explained to us about black body radiation and Einstein explained to us the photoelectric effect. I was curious about these two phenomena and I intended to think about black body radiation and the photoelectric effect to reach some conclusions. Black body radiation describes the amount of energy required to form an electromagnetic field. Here we can imagine a photon as a unit particle. So here we can see the amount of energy required to form a unit particle or a photon and its frequency. Once we go through the photoelectric effect, we can see that a photon can eject an electron from an atom, if it has a sufficient frequency. So it is clear that the frequency of a photon varies. That means the frequency of particles can vary according to the amount of energy stored in it. We know that the minimum amount of stored energy required or work function for a photon to eject an electron from an atom is closely related to its frequency. The intensity or velocity of the photons has no role in this situation. Here we can say that, if a photon doesn't have sufficient energy stored in it to eject an electron from an atom, it will radiate from the atom at the same time. In black body radiation, we can see the amount of energy required to create an electromagnetic field, and in the photoelectric effect, we can see that an electromagnetic field is added to an electron to eject that electron from an atom. Now we can imagine what will happen if the amount of energy is less than this level. Normally we can say that its frequency will be less. In a black body, it can't create an electromagnetic field, and in the photoelectric effect, it can't eject an electron from an atom. So it is just acting on the object and cannot cause anything serious. Imagine a particle with less energy stored than a photon. Maybe half or something less than a photon. What will happen if it is like that? Normally we can say that the frequency will be that much lesser. So at this time, those particles with lesser energy in it cannot act against anything. It can act like a transparent object and it can show only gravity according to its frequency. We all know that if one or more photons are accommodated in a system, it can add some mass to the total system. This way these low-energy particles can add mass to a system according to the number of particles in the system. Here I intend to say that dark matter may exist as particles like this. That's why it can contribute mass and gravity to the total energy of the universe. Here we can use the equation E equals hf and calculate the energy of the photon. We know that photons don't show any rest mass even if they travel with the speed of light. In light, we can observe photons with different frequencies at the same kinetic energy or velocity. The photoelectric effect states that if a photon has a certain frequency, it can eject an electron from an atom. Now for a moment, we can forget the photon. We can imagine an object with a fixed mass. Think that object is at rest now and we can apply a force on it. Suddenly the object gets moved and it achieves kinetic energy. So kinetic energy is the energy or force that affects another object or energy. So now the object's total energy is its rest mass plus its kinetic energy. So a photon's total energy is hf plus kinetic energy. Here kinetic energy is equal to the speed of light. So a photon's total energy is equal to hf plus c. We can see that kinetic energy is not adding to the object's rest mass. So it can leave the object at any time. Now we can check the momentum of an object. Imagine an object with a mass of 5 kilograms and a velocity of 8 meters per second. We can calculate the momentum of the object as 40 Newton-second and kinetic energy as 160 Newton. Now we can increase the velocity of the object to 10 meters per second. Again, we can measure the momentum as 50 Newton-second and kinetic energy as 250 Newton. Now I am increasing the mass of the object as 10 kilograms and keeping the velocity at 8 meters per second. And I calculate the momentum as 80 Newton-second and kinetic energy as 320 Newton. By this example, I would like to explain the kinetic energy of a photon. So if I increase the mass or velocity, it will increase the momentum and kinetic energy. Now we will see what is happening here. An object at a mass and a velocity has its momentum. To change the velocity of the object, I have to increase or decrease the applied force or kinetic energy. If I change the mass and need to keep the same velocity, I have to change the applied force. If I increase the mass and the applied force or kinetic energy remains the same as before, the object will have less velocity than the previous and the momentum will remain the same. So momentum is the property of the external force acting on the object, or momentum will be decided by the applied force. As I said in the example above, the velocity of the moving object is related to the rest mass of the object and its kinetic energy. If we consider a photon, it has no rest mass. We have no doubts that a photon has its own energy in it. So we have to work with the amount of stored energy in it because mass is also a form of energy. The energy of a photon is directly related to its frequency, and we know the energy of a photon E equals hf. The same equation we can write as E equals hc divided by lambda. Here h is the Planck constant, c is the speed of light, and lambda is the wavelength. Here lambda is the only variable in this equation. So variations in wavelengths will make changes in the frequency of a photon. The frequency of a photon is directly related to the stored energy of a photon. The photoelectric effect already states that the frequency of photons are not same always. We have no doubts that the amount of stored energy in photons varies. Now we can imagine two photons, X and Y, releasing from the Sun, and the amount of stored energy in these two are different. We can say the energy in X is greater than Y. Now we can apply the same amount of force or kinetic energy to these two photons. The velocity of these two photons must be different at this time. Here kinetic energy is acting on an object. We know the velocity of a photon v equals f lambda. Here velocity or kinetic energy of a photon is the velocity of light, c, is a constant. If kinetic energy remains as a constant, each photon must carry the same amount of energy in it. But it is not true here. So each photon has a different velocity according to its energy. We create all these concepts through our continuous studies. Aquillone is an individual research firm based in Japan. We focus on the theory of everything. Also, we create fascinating ideas to accelerate the technological growth of Type 1 civilization. We are creating favorable conditions for human society to enter the next stage of evolution. In all of our videos, you can find some interesting new ideas. You can see these things on our website. All of these are well explained in the book Key to the Secrets of the Universe. That is a simple book written in a way that everybody can understand the whole universe. There we are explaining the universe from the beginning stage. We start from the primordial coalition of two primary particles to form the Big Bang Singularity. Also, we are discussing many other issues in physics in the book. Or you can watch our videos for more information. All the links are in the description box. According to the rate of development of our technology, we are about to enter the next stage of cultural and social evolution. For that, we generate better ideas to enhance our technological growth. We work in all areas of the social and technological development of mankind. The availability of free energy is essential to accelerate the journey to a Type 1 civilization. Our aim is to make free energy available to all. Our main objective in this project is to fully utilize the solar energy reaching the Earth. For this, we are devising plans to rebuild the Tesla Tower and completely store solar energy. Our plan is to store solar energy and collect it in the smallest possible space. Using spacetime as a medium, we examine the possibilities of achieving an unpredictable velocity for our space travels. For that, we studied the changes that occur when a photon passes from one spacetime to another. Along with this, the solar system's movement inside spacetime was also studied. We understand that objects can move in two ways in spacetime. This possibility will bring revolutionary changes in our space technology. The same concept helped us understand why particles exhibit duality. You can see our journey to the Type 1 civilization in our book, How Can We Become Superhumans? This book mainly discusses how we should change socially and culturally under the new circumstances. We also discuss how to build a sustainable human society. Thank you for watching our video.